Breaking news. Kharkiv explosion exposes Russia's fake ceasefire. It is January 30, 2026. And while diplomats were shaking hands in Abu Dhabi while all these rumors of peace were flying around, the sky over Kharkiv just lit up. Explosions don't care about paperwork. And missiles certainly don't care about promises. If you stand with Ukraine, if you want the truth about what is actually happening on the ground, I need you to do one thing. Subscribe to Defense Reports right now. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. You don't want to miss an update. I'm Alex. Join me with Aria for the latest deep dive by Defense Report. We do sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of global defense news, military tech, and, strategic developments. And today we're going to cover the collapse of this so-called energy ceasefire before it even had a chance to begin. We're looking at the chilling reality of, weaponized weather as Ukraine faces minus 20 degrees Celsius temperatures. We're also tracking a new silent threat. It's made of foam and wood, and it's slipping right past radars.
And you are not going to believe this one. A shocking report from the front lines involving an actual cavalry charge in 2026.
It sounds like, I don't know, a glitch in the simulation maybe, but the sources we've got today, they paint a picture of a conflict that's evolving in some very strange and very dangerous ways.
Dangerous is exactly the right word, and confusing, frankly. Our mission today is to really unpack this massive disconnect between what we're hearing from diplomats, promises of a pause, and the brutal infrastructure siege that's happening right now.
It's the ultimate case of, watch what they do, not what they say.
So let's start there. The story that dominated everything yesterday morning, the energy ceasefire. I think a lot of people woke up yesterday maybe feeling a tiny bit hopeful. Walk us through what was supposed to have happened.
Right. So to set the scene, you've got these trilateral peace talks happening in Abu Dhabi. It's the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia at the table. On the morning of January 29th, headlines just start popping up everywhere, and they're mostly driven by comments from U.S. President Trump.
And the claim was huge.
It was massive. The claim was that Putin had agreed to a week-long pause in attacks on Kyiv and Kharkiv.
And on paper, the logic seemed kind of sound, didn't it? I mean, You look at the weather reports, the forecast is dropping to minus 20, maybe even minus 30 Celsius.
Exactly. The humanitarian argument was basically, let's pause this so millions of people don't literally freeze to death.
A pretty straightforward argument.
It is. And President Zelensky even came out and said he welcomed the effort. He was trying to stop the cold from becoming a weapon. He was ready to implement it. But this is where you have to look very closely at the diplomatic signals.
Okay.
While the Western media was running with this big ceasefire banner, the Kremlin was doing something very specific.
Which was what?
Strategic silence. When their spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, was asked about the agreement, he didn't confirm it. He just said, I cannot comment on that yet.
It feels, it feels ambiguous. Usually if you have a deal, you brag about it, don't you?
In Kremlinology, that kind of non-answer is basically code. It either means we haven't figured out how to spin this yet, or, more likely, we have absolutely no intention of honoring this. Silence is often the loudest answer they give.
And we didn't have to wait long for the translation, did we? Because while diplomats were sleeping in Abu Dhabi, Kharkiv was waking up to explosions.
Precisely. On the morning of the 29th and then overnight into the 30th, loud explosions just rocked the industrial districts. This wasn't a stray shell. This was, business as usual.
So the whole ceasefire thing was just smoke and mirrors.
It looks like it. A way to distract the international community, maybe buy a little time while they continue to stockpile missiles.
Zelensky actually called that out, didn't he? He said something like, while they talk peace, the Russian stockpile just keeps growing.
He did. And we need to be really clear about what this campaign is. It's not just about blowing up factories. This is what we call an infrastructure siege. The goal isn't just to destroy a target, it's to break the city's ability to sustain life itself.
Which brings us to what's happening on the ground in Kharkiv right now. Weaponizing winter is a phrase we hear a lot, but what does that actually look like? The reports I was reading describe the city as being in just pitch blackness.
That is the reality. The data shows 80% of the city, Ukraine's second largest, lost power after those strikes on January 26. And these follow-up attacks, the ones during the fake ceasefire, have just kept the grid completely unstable.
And we're not just talking about the lights flickering. It is minus 14 degrees Celsius right now, dropping to minus 20.
And this is where we really have to explain the specific vulnerability of these post-Soviet cities. It's crucial to understanding why this is a crisis, not just an inconvenience. Kharkiv relies on something called district heating.
Okay, so break that down for us. How is that different from, having a furnace in your basement?
Well, in the West, you often have your own boiler, right? You control your own heat. In these huge Eastern European cities, the heat is generated at a massive central plant, sometimes miles away. And it's pumped as superheated water through miles and miles of pipes into all these high-rise apartment blocks.
So it's like a circulatory system for the whole city.
It's one big organism, exactly. So if the power goes out at that main plant,
The heart stops beating.
the pumps stop, the hot water stops moving, and in sub-zero temperatures, stagnant water freezes incredibly fast.
And basic physics tells us water expands when it freezes.
Exactly. It expands with this incredible force, and it just bursts the pipes. But here's the absolute nightmare scenario. Once those pipes burst inside the concrete walls of a 20-story high-rise, the damage is structural.
You can't just turn the power back on a few days later?
No. The plumbing of the entire building is destroyed. It becomes uninhabitable for months, maybe years. You'd have to replace the plumbing of an entire skyscraper, all while still under bombardment.
So they're not just trying to turn off the lights. They're trying to create a ghost town.
It's a strategy of depopulation. If you can't capture the city with tanks, you force the people to leave by making the environment itself hostile to human life.
And the sources mentioned people are being resilient, of course, using wood stoves, going to these points of invincibility. But we're talking about over 1 million people. You can't run a city on wood stoves.
You can't. And the damage goes beyond apartments. I saw reports that the Kiev Petrsk Lavra was damaged.
Yeah, a UNESCO heritage site, the first time since World War II that it's suffered military damage.
And then you have the Feldman Ecopark, reports of lions and rare birds being injured or killed. It feels like nothing is off limits.
It just shows there's no morality in these strikes, even if the guidance systems are precise. But there was one incident on January 27th that really stripped away any pretense that this is just a military conflict. The train attack.
This one was hard to read about. We're talking about the Barvinkov-Lviv chop route.
And I want to be really clear for everyone listening. This is not a troop transport.
No, it's a civilian passenger train. It's a lifeline. It's how families evacuate. It's how grandmothers get away from the shelling. These trains are a symbol of safety.
So what happened?
3 Shahed drones targeted this train. One of them hit the locomotive and a passenger car directly.
I just want everyone to visualize this. It's not a radar station. It's a slow-moving train full of people.
At least 6 people were killed, scores injured. But the image that really sticks with me from the reports is what happened next. You have nearly 300 passengers evacuating this burning train.
In the middle of nowhere.
Into an open, snow-covered field in sub-zero temperatures. I mean, can you imagine the panic? Fire behind you, freezing darkness ahead of you. It's pure terror.
But I did read there was a moment of humanity there, right?
Mm-hmm.
A soldier named Omar.
Yes, a Ukrainian soldier who happened to be on board. The report says he just acted on pure reflex. Despite the shock, he immediately started pulling civilians to safety. It's that resilience again. But analytically, striking a train, it just demolishes any narrative Russia tries to spin about hitting military infrastructure.
This is terror. Full stop.
It's designed to make people afraid to move, afraid to even try to escape.
And to conduct this terror, they're evolving their tools. I want to pivot to the drone race because some of the things the sources mention sound like they came out of a hobby shop, but they're proving to be deadly serious.
You must be talking about the Chernica.
The Chernica. Get this description from the source. Black foam and wood. It sounds like a high school science project. How is something like that a threat to a modern military?
It sounds crude, doesn't it? Like a basement-assembled nightmare. But from an engineering standpoint, it's actually dangerously clever.
Who so? I mean, surely a modern air defense system can spot a chunk of foam.
That's the problem. Radar works by bouncing radio waves off of hard metallic surfaces. But foam and wood, they tend to absorb radio waves rather than reflect them.
So it's basically stealthy by design.
It has an incredibly low radar cross-section. It might show up as a bird or maybe just background noise. It's just very, very hard to see until it's way too late.
And it's not just a floating piece of foam, it's carrying a payload.
Right. It carries a 3.5 kilogram warhead called Kaplia. Now, that's not huge compared to a cruise missile, but it's enough to kill a family or knock out a transformer. But the real danger isn't even the explosion itself, it's the economics.
The cost equation.
Exactly. Think about it. This foam drone might cost, what, a few $1,000s to build? To shoot it down, Ukraine has to use a Patriot or an IRIS-T missile that can cost hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars.
So even if Ukraine shoots it down, Russia still wins that economic exchange.
That is the strategy. It's called defensive exhaustion. President Zelensky said Ukraine spent 80 million euros on missile stock just in January alone. Russia is trying to bankrupt Ukraine's air defense by just throwing cheap foam at their expensive interceptors.
That's terrifyingly pragmatic.
Yeah.
A war of accountants. And it's not just the foam drones. I saw a mention of the Molnia, the lightning drone. What's that?
That's a different beast entirely. The Molnia is acting as a mothership.
A mothership, like a flying aircraft carrier.
On a much smaller scale, yes. It carries 2 smaller FPV drones, it flies deep behind the lines, and then it releases these smaller drones to extend their range right into the heart of the city.
But how are they controlling these things?
Huh.
Usually you fly a drone too far, you lose the signal, especially with all the jamming.
And that is the biggest tech story in these reports. The one that has the defense ministry scrambling. Starlink?
Wait, Starlink, Elon Musk's internet. I thought that was geofenced, so the Russian military couldn't use it.
It's not supposed to work for them, no. But the reports are clear. Russian forces are installing Starlink terminals directly onto these long-range drones.
How are they even doing that?
It's likely through the black market. They buy terminals via third countries, set up accounts that look legitimate, and then use them to get high-speed, low-latency control over massive distances.
That completely changes the game. If you have Starlink, you don't need line of sight. You could fly that drone from a bunker in Moscow.
That's it. It turns a local weapon into a long-range precision strike tool. Ukraine's defense ministry is working with SpaceX to shut this down, to blacklist these terminals. But it's a constant game of whack-a-mole. You shut one down, they activate another.
So we have Starlink-enabled motherships and invisible foam drones. The air war is becoming incredibly high-tech and bizarre. But then I turned the page to the ground war reports, and I seriously had to double-check the date on my calendar.
I think I know where you're going with this.
The cavalry.
The cavalry.
We are in 2026. We are talking about satellite internet and stealth foam. And yet, there was a report from the Alexandrivka-Novopavlivka direction. A Russian assault group tried to attack on horseback.
It sounds completely absurd, like a bad joke from a history book, but we have to ask why. Why would a modern army do that?
My first thought was, did they just run out of gas? But is there some kind of tactical reason for it?
It's likely a mix, but it's leaning heavily towards desperation. First, think about the environment, the mud. Vehicles get stuck constantly. Horses cope better. And second, heat signatures.
Heat signatures.
A tank engine glows like a Christmas tree on a thermal camera. A drone operator can spot a truck from miles away at night. A horse, it has a much lower heat signature and no engine noise.
So they were trying to sneak in, using biology to beat the thermal optics.
They were trying to close the distance without triggering the usual sensors. It's a very low-tech solution to a high-tech problem. But the result was just tragic and bizarre.
The Ukrainian Iron Falcon's drone operators spotted them.
And stopped them. It did not end well for the cavalry.
Horses against FPV drones. It's a collision of centuries right there on the battlefield.
And it speaks to a massive resource crunch on the Russian side. If you're running out of armored personnel carriers, if all your trucks are getting blown up, you revert to older methods. But sending men on horseback against explosive drones it's a suicide mission.
And it tracks with the casualty numbers we're seeing. The sources say Russia is losing around 830 soldiers a day.
With total losses since 2022 estimated at 1.2 million, it's a staggering number, a real meat grinder.
Especially in the Pokrovsk sector. The fighting there is described as the fiercest. 30 aerial bomb attacks in a single day.
And yet, amidst all of this, the cavalry, the foam drones, the frozen cities, we still have the diplomatic track. And honestly, looking at the reports on the competence of the team in Abu Dhabi, it's worrying.
You mean the report about Trump's envoy?
Yes. There are reports that Trump's unnamed top envoy displayed a, quote, shocking lack of knowledge about the war. The phrase they used was that this envoy views territorial issues like real estate deals.
Like, I'll trade you this condo for that parking lot, but with sovereign territory and human lives.
Exactly. And when you treat these complex historical and strategic conflicts like a Manhattan real estate transaction, you get bad deals. You miss the nuance. You miss the fact that for Ukraine, this isn't about square footage. It's about their right to exist as a nation.
That lack of understanding just invites manipulation. It signals to Putin that the other side isn't serious, or at least doesn't understand the stakes.
It suggests that while the front line is brutal and sophisticated, the diplomatic line might be dangerously amateur.
So let's try to pull all this together. We started with a fake ceasefire, and we ended with cavalry charges. What's the through line here for the listener?
I think the key takeaway is the shift in Russian strategy. Look at Kharkiv. They've likely realized they cannot capture it militarily. They tried in 2022 and they failed. They don't have the forces to take a city that size in street-to-street fighting.
So they just move the goalposts?
Right. The goal is no longer capture. The goal is unviability. If you destroy the power, you freeze the pipes, you bomb the trains, the city just ceases to function. People leave, the economy collapses, it becomes a gray zone.
And the energy ceasefire rumor was just a distraction.
A way to look reasonable on the international stage while the foam drones and the missiles continue the real work of making the city unlivable.
It's a war of attrition, but focused entirely on civilian infrastructure. They're trying to evict 1 million people using the weather as their main weapon.
Precisely. And for Ukraine, the challenge is how you defend against this cheap swarm of threats without totally exhausting your own high-tech, very expensive resources. It's a brutal equation.
It leaves us with a lot to think about. We usually end with a provocative thought, and I think today it has to be this. If Russia is deploying foam drones and sending men on horseback, all while negotiating in Abu Dhabi, what are we actually seeing? Is this the desperation of a crumbling military running out of tanks? Or is it a cynical, calculated new phase of total war, where the primary target isn't the army, but just the family trying to keep their apartment warm?
That is the question. And looking at the frozen pipes in Kharkiv, I'm afraid the answer might be the latter.
A chilling thought for a chilling winter. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex Sanaria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. If you found this deep dive valuable, and if you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe to Defense Reports. It is your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.